Hey everyone, don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss an episode. Today we're continuing with a new chapter from the novel Rules of Two Neighbors. Guided me to it after I saw a building not much different from the rest of the buildings, bearing an old wooden sign on which was written in Arabic, Medical Care Center. When I knocked on the door of that building, I felt a sense of emptiness from anyone after I knocked for a long time and no one answered me. I also felt a sense of emptiness in the entire town of any people after dawn broke, and not a single person appeared on its streets, until my heart was reassured when the first person appeared, a man who was hurrying on his way without looking aside. So I continued knocking on the door without stopping, until I let out my breath after the answer finally came to me from inside, and the door opened. It was the first time I met Salah, the servant of my medical clinic. He asked me with his eyes closed, "Who are you?" He was a young man younger than me, short, dark-skinned. I said, "Dr. Fidel, the new doctor." He opened his eyes in disbelief, quickly tried to straighten his clothes, and welcomed me. Then he carried my bag and took me inside the building. The ground floor consisted of a large hall with several dusty wooden chairs and 2 rooms. I stepped into the first one and found it to be the doctor's private examination room, like any traditional examination room. A bed for patients, a doctor's desk, 2 chairs, a stethoscope, and a blood pressure monitor. I was surprised by the presence of a device for television detection, so I asked him in surprise as I wiped the dust that covered it, "Is there electricity?" He said, "Yes. We have a fuel-powered generator. We can run it for 2 hours a day if we want." I relaxed a little because of that. Then he moved me to the next room. It only contained a wooden cabinet. So he said, "It is a cabinet for dry and liquid herbs." So I asked him, "Where do these herbs come from?" He said, "I don't know. Since I came to this place, no single doctor or single patient has come here." I smiled and shook my head in wonder. Then I went up with him to the upper floor. It was a lodging for the doctor, which I found satisfactory for me. Then I found him busy gathering his scattered belongings to leave, so I asked him to stay. I didn't want to be the stranger who comes to scatter the papers, and the lodging was enough for both of us. But he insisted on moving his belongings to the herb room on the ground floor, and completed with a smile as he left, "Patients won't come to us anyway." I thought Saleh's talk was a joke when he told me no patients came to the medical clinic, but it was completely true. My first days there passed, and our door didn't knock once. At first, I thought the reason was that the townspeople didn't know of my arrival, so I increased my wandering in its streets with Saleh, who became my only friend in that place. On our first day of wandering, I asked him how we got our food. He told me that the town's ruler takes care of it, just as he takes care of his salary. As for my salary, he didn't know yet who would take care of it. I was amazed and told him that I had been informed that there would be someone to pay me here. He replied in surprise, "Perhaps the ruler will pay you at the beginning of the new month, though I don't think so." And he talked a lot about his stinginess. I used to think the condition of our country south of the old river was the worst, but after I saw that town and the poverty of its buildings and markets, I knew that there were those who suffered a lot. I learned that that town was nothing but one valley of the 7 valleys of Bani Isa, the largest region, similar, scattered valleys. Most of their residents live as nomads in the desert with their horses, camels, and sheep, while the rest farm their few lands relying on well water and the rain. I asked Salah about the availability of cars for transport between the valleys, and he said he had never seen a car before. I told him about the crazy old man who brought me the night I arrived, and he was surprised. I asked him about the weddings and the sounds of drums and flutes that never stop, and that I hadn't heard since my arrival. He sarcastically congratulated me on my vivid imagination. He added, pointing far into the sky, "When evening falls, you will hear nothing but the sound of the wind whistling. Not a single patient knocked on our door after 18 days had passed. So I thought the people of those valleys did not get sick, and a feeling of boredom overwhelmed me at all times, and Saleh's conversations became lukewarm, offering nothing new. Then, on my 19th day, I decided to go to the town's ruler, or the valley sheik, as some called him. He was not just stingy, he was one of those sticky people you can't stand sitting with for 2 consecutive minutes. He was a fat man with a thick beard covering his sagging face, wearing a wide cloak. He nonchalantly informed me, before I could talk to him about my salary, that he knew nothing of my arrival. So he wouldn't bear a single penny for me. What he might do is increase the food portion sent to Saleh. But if I wanted payment for my work, I should earn it from my patience. At that moment, I realized there was no more time to wait in that region. I returned angrily to my lodging and told Saleh I would leave, but he did not speak. I gathered my belongings and carried my bag to the entrance of the town, waiting for someone to take me to the military railway track. In the beginning of my wait, I wished that the old man who had given me a lift there in his car would appear again after 2 hours had passed without anyone paying attention to my presence. My hope became that anyone from the people of the valley would take me on their camel or horse to my destination. Then my hope was quickly dashed after everyone refused, with many of them making the excuse that they didn't know the way to the railway line I was headed to. The minutes and hours passed, one after another, and the sun began to set. It was then that I realized I was stuck in that place forever. I turned dejectedly towards the valley's houses and kicked the sand angrily with my foot. I decided to go back to Saleh again, waiting for another opportunity that might appear for me to leave. Just before I spotted him coming towards me, running from a distance, until he approached me and stopped in front of me, panting as he tried to catch his breath, and said, "There's a sick woman asking for you." My joy at having my first patient surpassed everything, to the point that it made me forget the hours I had spent waiting on the outskirts of the valley to leave. I resolved within myself that I would not charge a fee for that first visit. I entered the examination room. She was sitting waiting for me, a beautiful young woman in her mid-20s with long, wavy black hair. Large round earrings hung from her ears. She stood up when she saw me, revealing the colors of her long, embroidered dress. Patient, perhaps she came to accompany me to her house, where someone is already sick. I asked her to sit again and sat behind my desk. Then I nodded to her to speak, and she said with great seriousness, "I apologize that I was delayed all this time. I should have come to you days ago." I did not understand what she meant by her apology, and that showed on my face. So she continued while taking out a small cloth bag that I realized contained coins, and placed it on the desk in front of me. "It was I who requested your coming to Bonnie." Then she opened them out of the bag in front of me, and the gold coins inside sparkled with the light of the room's oil lamp, and I do not hide that my eyes sparkled with surprise. And she said, "Is this gold enough to be a counterpart for you?" I was surprised by her words and continued my silence so that she could complete her conversation. So she completed, "My name is Dima, or you can say as they say, Dima Al-Fajriya. I came to you from Wadi Al-Far where I live. Saleh had told me once that Wadi Al-Far is the furthest of the 7 valleys of Bani Isa. And she continued, "I want you to help me." He said, "Certainly," she said, pointing to her belly, "I want you to examine it." I noticed the first time her belly was slightly large. So I asked her, "Pregnant?" She said, "Yes." I nodded my head smiling and asked her to get on the examination bed. Then I called out to Saleh, who was waiting in the hallway to turn on the power generator, and I began my routine examination with my medical stethoscope. Then I became disturbed and looked into her eyes after I placed my stethoscope to hear the fetus's pulse and didn't hear it. I didn't even utter a word. Then I heard the sound of the generator outside the room's window, and with it a small light bulb on the TV skin device lit up. So I started using it to examine the fetus, but as I expected, the fetus's heart had completely stopped. So I put the device's hand aside and asked her to return to her seat, and I returned my seat, and I shoved the gold bag. She looked at me, so I completed, "It is a dead fetus," he fell silent and did not move, and silence prevailed between us for moments until he broke it, saying, "As I expected. So I came to you." I looked at her out of the corner of my eye. "So," she said with great calmness, "life has not yet been breathed into it." I felt sorry for her because of her shock, but it was the truth she had to know. So I said, "You must abort this fetus as soon as possible," she said while looking into my eyes. "It is not dead." And she said again, "Life has not yet been breathed into it." Then she pushed the bag of gold toward me again and said, "So I sent for you to come here," and added, "I was hoping my pregnancy would be normal like the rest of the women of Wadi Al-Far, Don Valley, but it is my destiny that I cannot escape toward her," and said calmly in sadness, "Unfortunately." She said to herself, wandering, "I wish not to return there again." Then she looked at me and said, "I did not come to you, doctor, just for you to tell me that life has not yet stirred in him. Rather, I came to you to accompany my long journey there," she continued bitterly, looking into void in front of her. "I will take him to Jartin." The sound of the children calling to each other in the alley opposite my upper room's balcony was very loud that morning, as was their daily habit. They found no place among the neighborhood's alleys to play with their cloth ball except that spot, so much so that I got used to their shouting. It became a fixed event for me that if it was absent for a day, I would feel that something was missing from my day. What truly amazed me was the way my younger brother, Zane, 7 years old, would sneak out of our bed every morning to catch up with him without me noticing, before his high-pitched shouting from the street would wake me, "Guffrin," so that I would go out to the balcony to reward him with a piece of candy if he scored a goal, as I used to know me mother used to do the same thing before she left a year ago. This was the most I resembled her after my physical features resembled my father's, and I inherited from him the soft brown hair and green eyes, while Zane inherited from our mother her black hair and dark brown eyes. I still remember her old words of my father, that she wished before their marriage this fair inheritance of resemblance, beauty for the girl and sternness for the boy. She didn't know that I would possess both qualities over the years. I remember her words as I looked at the playing children whispering when I raised my hand to them with a bag of candy, before they got excited and all ran screaming after the ball to score a goal and get my reward. However, their morning this morning was more exciting. Zane's hand had told them that today held two special events for me. The first is that I have reached my 24th year, and the second is that Mrs. Samaria will come to our house in the afternoon to take measurements for my wedding dress. My marriage will be announced in the courtyard of Judah in front of the people of Jartin at the end of this month. Judah is our city where we live, the most elegant of the 14 cities of Jartin and the most crowded with residents. Everyone here knows that the reason is its moderate climate and fertile land, which is different from the rest of our rocky land, which splits our land into two halves, east and west, starting from the Red Mountains in the south to the Great Wall of Garden in the north. The books say that Garden was originally two neighboring countries separated by the dry river, two countries similar in everything, whose civilization was built on agriculture around the banks of that river. Thousands of years of prosperity, bliss, and power in which each country had its independent rule from its people, before their destiny worsened. I once read in one of the history books of my father's library that one of the ancient rulers had suffered together, and the elderly took over the reins of power for 3 full centuries during which everything collapsed. Studied in history class, the dry Judah River had left enough silt before it dried up more than 2,000 years ago, just as it left its groove, from amnesia, and his stiffened body had shriveled up after he passed the age of 90. Yet he remained in power, supported by his entourage and hypocrites who in turn corrupted everything. Prosperity and bliss turned into abject poverty that began to creep into all parts of the two countries to inhabit their homes, and safety in their streets turned into violence and crimes the likes of which the country had never witnessed, a bloody era in which only the sound of empty stomachs rattling was raised, and the sound of gunpowder for those who preferred death by bullets to death by starvation. Then the earth got angry at our ancestors, and the river level decreased day by day until it dried up completely. The Great Famine occurred, which was called the 40 Years of Ruin. Some died, some left, some were imprisoned, and those who remained were those who accepted that hunger, hoping that their country would return to its former glory. But nature did not give them another chance. The climate suddenly changed, and the Sea of Acma raged, which surrounds the two countries from all sides except the south, to cover everything, and to come upon those who remained, and what remained of the two countries. Our country was covered with water for 2 centuries, before the climate changed and the water receded to appear to life again. So those whose ancestors had left it and were scattered in the deserts in other countries south of the Red Mountains returned to it, and travelers and tribes flocked with them from everywhere, and they dug groundwater wells to replace the dry river, and the two countries became one country called Jaratin, which was distorted over time to Jartin. And to protect our country from the evil of the raging Acma Sea, they began to build the Great Wall of Jartin, a massive stone dam, surrounding our country from the north, east, and west. Its construction took more than 2 full centuries. My mother told me once while stroking my hair, and I was 7 years old at the time, that our history is divided into before the Wall of Jartin and after it, and that we owe that wall our lives as it holds back enough water from the raging sea behind to destroy all of Jartin in a few hours. Then she showed me a painting drawn in one of the books about it. It was a painting of the inscriptions that were written on its foundations, inscriptions of our country's laws, or what the public knows as the rules of Jartin. I still remember her voice saying, those laws were inscribed on the foundations of the wall over the years, as if the collapse of one foundation would not be much different from the collapse of the foundations of our Great Wall. I didn't realize at the time that she would one day be subject to the same rule that was written below that sign. It was the first rule of Jartin, which says, Jartin never forgot what the elderly did to its. The extreme seriousness that appeared on my patient Alphadria's face as she said she would go with her fetus to Jartin suggested that she had made her decision before coming to me, and had only come to inform me prepared to accompany her on her journey. So I asked her inquiringly, Jartin, is this a place? She said it is a large country. I said I have not heard of it before, just like Bonnie I say before I came here civilization. So no one who passes the age of 50 lives on its land. This was an unfortunate fact. Our culture about other countries was very weak. We were not allowed to read any books other than our school curricula. Nor do I remember our curricula mentioning anything about those two neighbors of ours. Our country placed many restrictions on what the public reads, so much so that I didn't even browse a single page of my medical books before the approval of my town security officer. The girl said, perhaps because it is so far away. Not many people know it here either. It is a month-long journey to the south, 10 days on land and 20 at sea. So I fell silent, and the noise of the generator had stopped before I asked her, and why would you go there? She said, outside that country, life will never stir, my child. There you might have a chance to survive. Magic? She said no. It has a special nature and laws that differ from the rest of the countries. And she added, perhaps you will find my words strange, but you should know that everything I am about to tell you is nothing but the absolute truth. Then she said shyly, my fetus is not legitimate. She paused for a moment, so I nodded my head for her to continue her conversation. So she continued, I live in Wadi Al-Far as I told you, but I do not belong to them. My beloved was one of them only. As for me, I moved in with him a month ago for our marriage, but he died before we could complete this marriage after leaving this fetus in my womb. I belong to that distant country, Jartin, Then she smiled bitterly and said, I thought I had finally given up my Jartinian qualities by moving away from it. But as my mother told me one day, Jartin is our destiny that we have not and will not escape. Then she stopped talking when Salah knocked on a room door, and I allowed him to enter. So he entered carrying a hot drink he prepared for me, then left, so I asked her immediately, So you are Jartinian? She said, No, I am from the lineage of Jartin. And she exhaled, saying, How much I hate that place. Do you know something, sir? I came from Jartin to the Valley of Dawn, and traveled all that distance to free myself from being in Neslia, and would have done more if the distance was longer. You don't understand anything, do you? So I nodded in agreement, and she said, The Neslia are the bearers of shame in Jartin. The rules of Jartin all pertain to human souls. They say that before the wall of Jartin was built, the country had witnessed crimes and sins like no other country ever had. So the second rule of our country attaches shame to the sinful soul forever. She continued after a moment's pause. No live fetus is born outside of Jartin. And I was certain of that today after your examination of my fetus. The fetuses of Jartin women remain without a soul if the pregnancy is from a legitimate marriage in a courtyard called the Qawad courtyard. The fetus receives its pure soul from those who die a natural death throughout the country. And its bearer does not have to go to the Qawad courtyard for that. As they say there, the soul chooses its bearer, but if the pregnancy is illegitimate and its bearer wants it to survive, she must go to the courtyard on the Day of Forgiveness. The Day of Forgiveness is held at the end of every month. There, she is executed in front of the people of Jartin by the most just judges.
The darkest hour.